Hello my friends, this is Lindy. Welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. Today I'm going to tell you about the 5 finalists in the fiction category for the Governor General's Award. I have started this video several times and there have been helicopters going overhead. Next door neighbor is using a leaf blower. Fingers crossed that I'll be able to get through this because there aren't going to be very many more days that I can film outdoors. So, out of these 5 books, I have read 3 of them and 2 of them I did not finish. I started and did not care for them. So I'll tell you about those first. The Most Precious Substance on Earth is by Shashi Bhat, who is a South Asian Nova Scotia writer, and her character in her novel is also South Asian. It starts out when she's about 14 or 15 in high school, has a huge crush on her English teacher, and he ends up taking sexual advantage of her, which is a trauma that affects her for the rest of her life. But I didn't get past the high school scenes. It was just too hard to read about the huge mistakes that a teenage girl makes. So that's why I didn't finish. And I also didn't finish probably Ruby, which is by Lisa Bird Wilson. The author is of mixed ethnicity, white and Métis, and so is her central character, Ruby. So what happens to Ruby? We meet her when she's about 30 years old at the start of the book, but then the book does go back and forth in different periods in time. When Ruby was a baby, her mother gave her up for adoption. And as was often the case, Indigenous babies were placed with white foster families, and later she was adopted by a white family where there wasn't a lot of love. So she wants to find out more about her birth family, including her Métis or Cree father. And she's totally messed up. Abusing alcohol, having sex with all the wrong people, I think both men and women. And again, all of this trauma was just too much for me at the time that I was reading it, and I didn't finish it. Obviously, these first 2 books are good books because here they are, finalists for a literary prize. So don't let my failings as a reader deter you. But these next 3 that I'm going to tell you about, I liked all of them very much. I'm going to start with another one by an Indigenous author, Brian Thomas Isaac. He's from the Okanagan Indian Reservation, and that is where this story is set. It starts out in 1956. And the boy that we meet is 6 years old. I'm going to read you a passage because this is a book that's really good for people who love setting. So, boy is 6, as I said. His mother is Grace. Grace used the back of a hatchet to flatten an empty syrup tin and handed it to Eddie. You get up on the roof and find where the hole is. Look for a missing shingle. Shove this under a shingle as far as you can, and don't fool around up there and fall off. After you've done that, go inside the attic and get the cat out of there. Damn thing was burying its shit in the shavings last night. Kept scratching right down to the ceiling. I thought for sure it was gonna dig through and fall on me. So Eddie climbs up there, finds the hole, repairs it, and then suddenly his 3-year-old brother Lewis appears at the top of the ladder. so I'm going to keep reading. Smiling, with drool hanging from his chin, as he reached for Lewis, his little brother pulled away and almost fell backward off the ladder. It took a long time before Lewis allowed Eddie to squeeze past him and stand one rung below. They made their way slowly down to the ground. Lewis followed me up the ladder, Eddie said. I can't go anywhere. Grace went to the woodshed, grabbed the hatchet from the chopping block, and knocked the first 3 rungs off the ladder. Then she took Lewis by the hand. Both of you get in the house where I can keep an eye on you. All the Quiet Places was also long-listed for the Giller Prize. The next book I'm going to tell you about, I no longer have a copy because I passed it along to my friend Kathy. Finding Edward by Sheila Murray. It was a Jamaican Canadian, and so are the 2 main characters in Finding Edward. We have Cyril, who immigrates from Jamaica to go to university in Toronto, and he is quiet, studious, straight-laced, tries to keep his head down. Other students at the university, other black students, make him aware of what is happening politically and with social activism around him. Then there's a second storyline about a Jamaican Canadian named Edward, who was born about 70 years before Cyril, but also living in Toronto, and what life was like for him. And in the contemporary storyline, Cyril is trying to find out more about Edward. One of the things about Edward is that after he served in the Navy, he was taken on by the Canadian Pacific Railway. So I'm going to read you a passage. He's living in Halifax at the time. This is a triumph because in Halifax, he sees for himself how many colored men want this job. Some of them have university degrees in science and medicine. He takes the training, which isn't much, and straight away onto the train with 100 details to learn about his impending duties. It was all easy after the Navy. Same sorts of things. Working in a tight space that's always moving, keeping it ship-shape and properly stowed, polishing the buttons and chrome and shoes, obeying orders without question. At sea, lives depended on that. So he has a conversation with one of the older black porters on the train. They told you every passenger who rides on this train is your boss, man, woman, or child? Yes. That is the truth, and don't forget it. If anyone says jump, you jump. Understand? I think so, Edward says. I served in the Navy. That was about courage and acceptance, says the man. In here, it's about fortitude and endurance. Every damn day of it. You never get used to it. I've been called slave and boy and N-word so many times, I still have to stop myself. But I always do. One of the many things I loved about this novel are how important events in Black Canadian history are woven in across this, many decades. And it never seems like a history lesson because Sheila Murray really incorporates them into the storyline itself. Now, I read you that passage about the time that Edward was a train porter because The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayr is currently shortlisted for the Giller Prize. This one is going to be announced on November 7th. And I think it would be so cool if 2 books about Black sleeping car porters win important awards in Canada. The GG for Finding Edward and Giller for The Sleeping Car Porter. I just would love that so much. They're both excellent books. But my personal favorite of all 5 that are on the GG is one that is also shortlisted for the Giller. I say it's my personal favorite of the 5 for the GG. My personal favorite for the Giller is A Sleeping Car Porter. So, Pure Color. I think if you've watched my channel previously, you've heard me talk about this. Sheila Heti is a Toronto writer. She's white. This is a bit of a strange story, but it's something we can all identify with. Mayr falls in love with Annie, who doesn't return her affection, or not to the same degree. Mayr's father dies, and she is filled with grief. It feels like she's become a leaf on a tree. It's a very philosophical novel with lovely passages. So if you are a writer who loves sentences and innovative use of language, Pure Color is definitely for you. I'm going to read you a passage. In the cosmic landscape, plants have front row seats. God is thrilled to have the audience of creation made up mostly of plant life, trees, bushes, flowers, and berries, sitting down to enjoy the show and saying at intermission, "What a romp!" But for us to imagine ourselves in their place would be utterly horrifying to the humans who would not want to be living that way, life as an eternity of enjoying plays. But the plants have learned over millions of years how to be the audience of creation. They know how good it feels to be the open, accepting audience of the show, which humans could never be and wouldn't even understand, for our purpose comes from being its critics. Seeing an audience of plants just sitting there seems like doom and uselessness to a human. But to be the audience of creation is a wonderful thing. What a privilege to be able to sit there and watch it, to be entirely filled up by life's beauty. It's a privilege to have front row seats, but it was not easy for the plants to learn how to sit there. For what reason are they tasked with being the audience of creation? Oh, for no reason. Oh, because God is an egoist. Because he's an artist. Because even though creation is flawed, God is secretly proud of its aspects and loves his work being noticed. Just a taste of Pure Color by Sheila Heti. The announcement for the winning GG in the fiction category is going to be made on November 16th. Please let me know in the comments if you have read any of these and if you have preferences, which one you would like to see win. Thank you so much for watching.